The train whistle shrieked through the dusty Wyoming station as Abigail Pierce stepped down onto the platform, her worn carpetbag clutched tightly in trembling hands. The stares of strangers burning against her back, for she knew exactly what they saw: an unwanted daughter, sold off by her bitter stepfather as a mail-order bride to a man she had never met. Her fate sealed not by love but by humiliation, for the arrangement had been made not to give her a home, but to shame the man who was to marry her. The stubborn cowboy named Cole Rawlins, who had enemies in town eager to laugh at his expense when they saw what kind of wife he had been saddled with. Abigail, though only 20, felt older than her years, her heart hardened by loss and rejection, yet still fragile with the hope that maybe, just maybe, she might be treated with kindness. But when she lifted her eyes and saw the man waiting at the edge of the platform, broad-shouldered, sun-browned, hat pulled low, something inside her stilled. For Cole Rawlins did not look like a man easily broken by gossip or mockery. He looked like bedrock carved out of the Wyoming hills, his gaze steady, his jaw set, and when the jeering crowd nudged one another, whispering that the great Rawlins had been duped into taking a bride no man wanted, Cole's lips twitched into the faintest of smiles, not cruel but protective, and he stepped forward, taking Abigail's bag from her hands with a gentleness that shocked her, his voice low and certain as he said, "You're mine now, and I don't give a damn what they think." Words that made her throat tighten because for the first time in her life, someone had claimed her without shame. He lifted her into the wagon, ignoring the laughter behind him, and drove them away from the station, the road stretching wide and lonely. And Abigail dared a glance at him, expecting coldness or resentment, but found instead a strange warmth in his eyes, a promise unspoken, though when they reached his ranch, she saw the weight of his life in the weathered boards of the house, in the fields that demanded long days of labor, and in the silence of the empty rooms that spoke of a man who had lived too long alone. Yet Cole moved through it with the certainty of a man who belonged to the land, and now, in some unexplainable way, to her too. That first night, she sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing, waiting for him to demand what most men would from a bride. But instead, he simply sat in the chair by the window, watching the stars, telling her she had nothing to fear, that no one would touch her until she wanted it. And Abigail, tears slipping down her cheeks, realized the cruelest part of the scheme had failed, because the cowboy they thought would be shamed was instead the only man who had ever treated her as more than a burden. And though her place in his world was uncertain, one thing became clear as the days turned into weeks. Cole Rawlins might have been forced into taking her, but he refused to let her go. And that decision would change both their lives in ways no one in town ever saw coming. The days that followed were harder than Abigail had ever imagined, yet strangely sweeter too. For though the ranch demanded work from sunup to sundown, Cole never treated her like a servant or a burden, but like a partner, showing her how to feed the chickens, mend a fence, or ride a horse with patience that surprised her. And in those quiet lessons she began to see the truth of the man beneath the cowboy hat, a man who carried scars deeper than the ones on his sun-bronzed hands, scars from years of being laughed at by townsfolk who resented his independence and whispered that he would die alone. And she understood then why her stepfather and Cole's enemies had conspired to send her, the forgotten, unwanted girl, as his bride, hoping to humiliate him with a wife no one else wanted. But instead of shame, Cole wore her presence like armor, daring anyone to mock them, his arm steady around her waist whenever they walked through town, his voice calm but cutting when he silenced the gossip. And each time he did, Abigail's chest ached with something she had never felt before, a mix of gratitude, admiration, and a dangerous spark of longing. Still, the whispers reached her ears late at night, the voices in her own head telling her she was nothing but a pawn, charity case, a weight around his neck, and one evening by the fire she broke, her words tumbling out in a rush as she confessed the truth of her stepfather's cruelty. How she had been sold like unwanted stock, and that if Cole wanted to send her away, she would go without protest. But at that he stood so quickly the chair scraped the floor, his eyes burning as he crossed the room and knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his rough ones, swearing low and fierce, "Abigail Pierce, you listened to me. No man sold you. No man shamed me, and no one, not even you, gets to decide you don't belong here. You are my wife, and that means you're mine to protect, mine to honor, and I won't let anyone, not your kin, not this town, tell you otherwise." And the certainty in his voice shattered something inside her, tears spilling as she realized he meant it, every word. And when his hand lifted to brush her cheek, calloused thumb warm against her skin, she leaned into it without thinking, her heart pounding not with fear, but with a need she could no longer deny. That night she lay awake listening to his steady breathing beside her, aching with the desire to trust him fully, and when dawn broke she rose before him, determined to prove she could be more than a wife in name only, throwing herself into the rhythm of the ranch with renewed spirit. And soon the neighbors began to notice, for when they came by expecting to see a pampered girl struggling in the dirt, they instead found Abigail balancing feed buckets on each arm, her skirts dusted, her cheeks glowing with strength, laughing as she worked side by side with Cole, and even the harshest gossips fell quiet when they saw her ride into town with her head held high, her husband at her side, looking for all the world like she had been born to that saddle. Still, there were those who couldn't stand to see Cole Rollins win where they had meant him to fail, and trouble brewed in whispers of land disputes and debts owed, but Abigail no longer trembled at shadows, because in Cole she had found the one man who refused to let her go, who saw her worth even when she could not, and in herself she had discovered a courage she never knew was there, a courage that would soon be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine.